Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. This is going to be the first video in my series all about buttercream. All of the videos in this series are going to be set up the exact same way so you can easily reference the videos and see which buttercream is going to be best suited for your project. Let's start off by first talking about the usability and the pros and cons of French buttercream. So first of all, I always use this buttercream specifically when I'm making macarons. The reason is because this buttercream requires a lot of egg yolks. And if you've ever made macarons before, then you know that macarons require a lot of egg whites, and then you're often left over with a bunch of egg yolks. It's important to note that this buttercream doesn't actually crust up, so if you're using it to do something like crumb coat a cake, you can totally do it, but it's not going to crust up the way American buttercream does. The biggest pro for this buttercream is that it can use up a lot of egg yolks. However, it does make a very small amount with even 5 egg yolks. And you also have to use a lot of butter, so that's a little bit of a con for me. Moving along to one of the more important factors is the taste. I would describe French buttercream as having a very custardy flavor, and it is a little bit lighter in sweetness. So it's good to pair with something like a caramel because it doesn't really conflict with the amount of sugar that's in a caramel sauce. French buttercream, however, is usually not my pick for something like cupcakes because I find it very, very buttery. But this is totally a preference thing. I personally don't like it when frostings are super buttery in flavor. The great thing though is that French buttercream can be easily flavored just like any other type of American or Italian meringue buttercream. So if you find it is a little bit too buttery, maybe try making it a chocolate French buttercream with some cocoa powder. Now, I briefly talked about performance earlier, but this time I really put it to the test. So first I started off with just the French buttercream as is, and I used a large French piping tip, and it really did hold up very, very nicely. Sometimes though, if it's a little bit warm, it can fall a little bit. And this buttercream really does not work that well with Russian tips. It can be done depending on the style of Russian tip, but I say just use a different buttercream that's better suited for it. With this buttercream, I use my Chef Master food gel or Americolor food gel. Really, any food gel should work with this. All you have to remember is that you need to keep mixing. I will say though that it does alter your colors slightly because it's very yellow. One of the final tests that I'll always put all of my buttercreams through in this series is seeing if it can make a rose. And I'm not just looking to see if it can make a rosette because even more loose buttercreams can make a rosette. The true test is, can it make a rose? And if you've never made a buttercream rose before, it's very, very easy. You start off with a little base as you saw before, and then you do little half arcs like this. And this is all in real time. So the buttercream rose did come together fairly easily. This also freezes really well. So once you're done with your buttercream roses, and honestly, if I was doing this for more than just a demonstration, I would have put a small piece of parchment underneath, and this would have made the rose very easy to just slide off and put onto a cookie sheet and then place it all in the freezer once I was done all of my roses. The reason that you freeze your buttercream roses sometimes is so that you can place it on a cake more easily and you can stack your buttercream roses. And then even when it comes to temperature, it'll just be fine because of the natural hold that your buttercream should have. And as we can see here, the French buttercream actually does have a really good hold to it. And if you're finding yours isn't holding up as well, add more butter. Now, if you've made it this far into the video and you've decided, yes, French buttercream is the buttercream for me, then here's the method for it. Now, you guys know I don't like reinventing the wheel, so I'll post down in the description box below the website where I found this recipe. If you've made Italian meringue buttercream before, it pretty much follows the same method. It's just that we use egg yolks instead of egg whites. So we heat that sugar on the stove to 245 degrees Fahrenheit. There is a little bit of water in there as well, and then we slowly pour it in while those egg yolks are whipping. And it's really important that you use your whisking attachment for this, not the paddle attachment, or else you're not going to incorporate enough air. It's going to look really soupy like this, and it should be more pale in color. And then go ahead and add in your room temperature butter. It's really important that when you get to the step where you're going to be adding in your butter, that you switch to a paddle attachment. I used to always leave my whisk attachment on, and sometimes the butter was just a little bit too hard for it, so it actually would damage my whisk attachment, and it also incorporated too much air. You don't want too much air when you're incorporating the butter, because then you end up with these large bubbles in your buttercream. There's no set time that you need to continue whipping for, but you just want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and feels airy and light. Now, ideally, hopefully you're using your buttercream right away, but if you're not, here are some tips for you. So I stored this in the fridge, and this will actually last in your fridge for up to 2 weeks. But as you can see, it's very, very hard now. I can barely get it out of the container. So I'm going to place it back into my KitchenAid stand mixer. Now, if you don't have a stand mixer, you can do this method as well with a glass bowl or whatever else you're using. Just make sure that it's safe to go on the stove. And I'm kind of using a double boiler method. So you can see here, I'm getting a little bit of sliding action from the frosting, which means it's ready for this first step. Now, you could easily just let this thaw out a little bit more and then get to the next step of whipping, but that takes too long and I'm gonna hurry, so that's why I use this double boiler method. Now, as you can see, it was still quite cold, so I need to put it back on again and let it kind of get soupy like that. And once it gets soupy on the sides and it's more evenly dispersed and not in that big chunk, then it's eventually going to whip up like this. And it only took about maybe 5 minutes to get back to this stage. Now, this curdled look might happen to you even when you're making your buttercream fresh, and that's usually happening because your butter is actually too cold. So if that happens, you use the exact same method and it'll turn out to be this nice, dreamy, creamy frosting. So I briefly mentioned this earlier, but I didn't quite categorize it as a con. For me personally, it is a con just because I like to have super white buttercream a lot of the time. So if a bride or somebody was requesting a cake from me and they wanted white buttercream, this is not the buttercream that I would use. A little bit of purple food gel can be added so you get a little bit of a nicer white color, but I just find that you have to mess around with the ratios and be really careful with how much you add. I still didn't even achieve that super nice white color. So again, there are just other buttercreams out there that will give you a nicer, brighter white. So go with that if you are wanting a white buttercream. On the upside though, this does color really well and you're still going to be able to get your nice, vibrant colors. Overall, it's a great buttercream. I tend to use it when I'm specifically using up egg yolks, but the recipe that I'm referencing makes quite a small amount. So if you were to cover a cake with this, it would take a lot of butter, and that's going to end up being a little bit more expensive than your average buttercream. I love using it in macarons and pairing it with other flavors, but let me know down in the comments below. Have you ever tried French buttercream before, and what do you like pairing it with? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Speedy fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, I have many more buttercream videos all lined up for you guys in this series, but if you want to see something specific and you think I might miss it, or you just want to tell me what you want to hear more about, please comment down below. See you later, Sweetie fam.